It's September in the UP. There's so much going on, I don't know which way to turn. We'll take a look at what it takes to get into the sport of goose hunting.
It's all about being in the right spot. That's the 90% of it, is being in the right spot.
Also some tips to make sure you're ready for archery season, and a look at monarchs. 9 million acres of forest, 1,700 miles of continuous shoreline, 4,300 lakes, 12,000 miles of streams, more than 300 waterfalls, 15 counties, 2 time zones, and 1 area code. Welcome to the Upper Peninsula. Welcome to 906 Outdoors.
Dominic, my son here, his first goose hunt with the gun, actually shooting today, and first bird, he knocked her right down and did a good job. He's been coming with me for quite a few years now, and like I said, it's the first time shooting, so he did pretty good.
I've had the opportunity to film a few goose hunts. One thing they seem to have in common is that on each hunt someone mentions how addicting it is. I would have to agree. I've only filmed it so far, but I find myself wanting to line up more goose hunts. What does it take to get started? Do I need 100 decoys? What about calls? Where do I set up and why? On this hunt, that's what I set out to learn.
It can be a gear intensive, but you shouldn't be intimidated by having a lot of gear. You don't need a lot of gear. Just need a couple decoys, a good spot. And the key with goose hunting, just like deer hunting and anything else, is scouting. Watch the birds, see where they're moving to. If you're hunting water or hunting a field, pattern them. Get an idea when they're moving, where they're moving to, and that's the spot you want to be. Get permission and be in that place before they move, and have the right size shot that you're capable of shooting. A 12 gauge is fine. We had a young fellow out here today shooting a 20 gauge, and he was able to knock down a couple birds with that, no problem. Just make sure you're competent with your weapon, safe with the weapon, and go out and have fun.
It's nice to get out with family and friends and just enjoy being outdoors. It's not always about how many you shoot.
906 Outdoors is brought to you by Race Driven.
Get in touch with your adventurous side and find your drive with Race Driven. As an online retailer, dealership, and manufacturer, we can provide power sport enthusiasts with virtually any part or accessories for ATV, UTV, and motorcycles. Customer driven, quality driven, race driven.
Typically, geese do is they roost on water at night, and a lot of times they'll feed late in the evening, so you can scout in the afternoon. And where they are in the evening, a lot of times they'll be in that spot in the morning, especially if they're in fields. And they're coming to the field to feed, especially the cereal fields or small grain fields. They're coming looking for the spent grain is what they're doing. Occasionally, earlier in the year, you'll get them in green fields, alfalfa fields, things like that. But a lot of times as the fall goes on, they start hitting the oat fields, the wheat fields, and the barley fields. And then late when the corn comes off is when they start really using the picked corn fields. There's a lot of cover in cornfields. It's a lot easier to hunt. You don't need to have blinds and all that stuff. A lot of times if the corn's standing, you can hide in the corn. It makes it a little easier for people to get into it. Shoot. Got one. You know, I like to use a flag a lot. The movement, that's the flag we were waving around in the field. Geese see that at a distance, and it implies that geese are landing, so they're going to follow that in. And you can use that right up to where they almost come to the ground. Calling, you know, you don't have to be a world champion caller to be effective for geese. If you can just make a honk noise, a little bit of a growl to get them right when they're going to land, those can be effective. Sometimes you don't need calls. It's all about being in the right spot. That's the 90% of it, is being in the right spot. You don't have to have the fanciest decoys, just being where the geese want to be. That's the most effective thing you can do. Calling is something you need to practice with, and you want to mimic natural geese. So go out and watch them on a lake or a river someplace, or in a field, listen to them, see what they're doing, how they talk to each other, how they respond when other geese are flying into a flock that's already on the ground. And pay attention to that. That's what you want to sound like that. You want to make them feel comfortable, so they're going to come close by. The guys, they had a combination of different models and blinds, and when they first came on the market 10 years ago, they were pretty expensive, but nowadays they're quite reasonable and they're easy to get. The key with blinds is get one that's comfortable, practice using it. It's a lot different hunting from a laying down position and sitting up and shooting, because the birds are going to be really close. It's hard to get used to the distance, and it takes a couple seconds to get up and be in a position to shoot. So it's good to practice that way. You know, don't just be practicing from a standing position like you would at a skeet range. It's something you need to get well versed with, and how to do it safely with the weapon, because I've seen people accidentally discharge a gun in a blind like that, and it could be dangerous. So you got to be careful with it. Well, you have to use non-toxic shot when you're hunting waterfowl anywhere in North America. So you know that can be steel shot, it can be the tungsten iron, it can be the bismuth, all the fancy shots. Generally for geese, most people are shooting BB, triple BB, something in that range, or ones. You can shoot them with twos too, especially if you're shooting ducks at the same time. With a 20 gauge, it's hard to get the larger size shot. So typically twos, if most people are shooting twos with a 20 gauge. And in that case, you know, you don't have as much shot volume in the shell because it's smaller. Plus, you don't have as much distance with it, so you got to watch your range. And that's probably one of the most key things people do, is they struggle with trying to get used to what's range. And when you put out your decoys or whatever, you use your decoys as a gauge of how far you can shoot. You don't want to shoot past 30, 35 yards. Any more than that, and you're more likely to wound a bird and lose it than you are to have a killing shot on a bird. This year, you know, we had the early season was September 1st through the 10th. And then our regular season runs for from September 11th all the way till December. We try to maximize the amount of days that we have where we have geese. So we run back to back. So we have a very, very long liberal season in Michigan this year for geese. Hunters seem to be very happy with that. The guys I've talked to, run into, are very satisfied with it. And our duck season starts September 27th and runs for 60 days, 6 birds a day. And this year, the major change for duck season will be you're allowed to shoot 2 hen mallards. We're allowed 4 mallards in the bag out of 6, but in the past, Michigan's always been very conservative about mallard hen harvest. This year we're allowing 2. We've had some research that was recently concluded that showed that we can't stockpile them, and harvesting is not adding to the mallard decline. What drives mallard populations more than else in the Great Lakes Basin is water levels. And as we see the Great Lakes water levels return to a more normal or higher level than they have been in the last decade, we expect to see mallard populations respond accordingly and actually increase.
906 Outdoors is brought to you by Cooking Wild Seasonings. Cooking Wild Seasonings summer sausage. Regular, jalapeno, and garlic. Get yours today at cookingwildseasonings.com. It's time to make you hungry. Brought to you by Cooking Wild Seasonings.
Today we're going to make a blueberry balsamic pheasant. Going to get this going really, really hot. We're going to use a combo of safflower, avocado, and coconut because we get a really high smoke point on this. We're going to just big chunk the onions. We've got some organic sliced white, and then we're going to use just 1 big clove of garlic. Some fresh ground pepper, and some Himalayan pink salt. We're just going to kind of get a nice quick sear on that. We've got a beautiful sear on both of these breasts. We're going to put a little bit more oil in. So I'm going to put in the mushrooms. Okay, let's get our onions in here. And we're just going to thinly slice our giant garlic. There we go. Get that in there. And then I've got some beautiful rainbow carrots that we're going to be using. Let these cook down a little bit. The salt helps the mushrooms and the onions and the vegetables release a little bit of moisture as well. All right, let's get our potatoes in here. Potatoes can take a lot of salt, so we're going to do 1 more layer of salt and pepper. I'm going to put in some pre-cut sun-dried tomatoes. Can of tomato paste. We're going to put a cup of veggie broth. So I'm going to use some frozen blueberries. 2 cups. And then half a cup of balsamic vinegar. And then I'm going to do just a handful of dried rosemary. Get that stirred up. We'll put the breast back in. And this is going to go in the oven at about 425 for about 30 minutes. Then we'll check it, see if we need to adjust the temperature. This has only been in for about 20 minutes right now. We're getting a nice thick gravy here. So we'll let that go for about another 30 minutes. I just want to see if these are fork tender so I don't have any hard potatoes. I think we're ready to plate this. So we've got carrots and onions, some potatoes. Let's get a little bit of this pheasant. And there you go.
.906 Outdoors is brought to you in part by NutriFeed, nutritional feed solutions for deer and horses. Archery season is right around the corner. Here's some tips to make sure you're ready to go.
No matter whether you have a longbow, recurve, compound, or crossbow, you've got to practice. And particularly with crossbows, and the fact that you have to be very familiar with the bow, how it works, cocking it, unloading it, how the safety works. That's the biggest reason to practice with the crossbows. Not only do you want to make sure that it's sighted in, but you want to make sure you're familiar with it so that when you're using it, it's almost second nature that you're not going to have the safety on when that big buck comes. And you want to make sure that everything is up to snuff with the bow, but also with you and using your bow. The traditional guys, they'll practice all year long. A lot of compound guys shoot all year long, but if you don't, make sure you get out, practice, make sure everything's flying right. Double check your broadhead flight, make sure that that's flying the same as your field tips. And then of course you want to check your bow over, make sure everything's good. Compound bows, go around, tighten up all the little screws. Then of course look the cables over, the string, make sure the serving is good. Guys that are using a peep sight with the tube, $2, replace the tube. It's a simple thing to do every year, but if that breaks, your peep sight will spin, it won't be lined up, and you won't be able to hunt. Lube your string, wax your string good, your cables. On the compounds, check your servings around the pulleys. Make sure that they're not cracked, ready to break. double check your release, make sure that's working good. This crossbow here, the fella had it hanging in his garage. Looks like a mouse chewed on his cable, so now he's going to have his cables replaced. Usually what we like to do when we do that is we'll put string and cables on so that it's a match set and everything's timed and it's going to shoot correctly. On this crossbow right here, the rail wasn't waxed properly all the time and he wore through his serving. That isn't a real big deal, but it has to be done. Make sure you wax your string, lube your cables. This crossbow happens to have a slide in here. You can see where the cables go through the plastic slide, and that's good. But this still has to be lubed up. On the cheaper ones, this cable is rubbing on the top of this cable slot. It's really critical that those be lubed up really, really well, or you'll wear through the cables. And if this breaks and blows apart, it's going to be a really expensive repair. It could break a limb. The other thing on the crossbow is it's super important that you tighten all of the bolts. Make sure everything's tight. Make sure that these bolts are tight, this is tight. Make sure your limb bolts are tight. Make sure that nothing's vibrating, gonna rattle, loose. And then of course, on your scope, you wanna make sure that everything is really tight. There's a tremendous amount of force when you fire a crossbow, a lot of vibration. That's where this stuff can come loose. The other thing you wanna check out, this is the most critical part of your complete outfit, is your arrow. The arrow and broadhead are what actually kills the animal. Every bow out there, whether it's a longbow, recurve, compound, crossbow, all they are is an arrow launcher. Some do it a little better than others, but that's what they do. They launch the arrow. The arrow is critical. It has to be a good quality. It's got to be well balanced. It's got to be tuned to the bow. There's more to arrows than just buying an arrow and putting a broadhead on it and going hunting. A couple things you want to watch for. You'll notice that the broadhead is perfectly lined up with the vanes. Everything is in line, and that's critical. On a two-blade broadhead, what you want to do, you want to line it up so that both of the blades are lined up with the hen feathers or the two solid colored feathers. The other thing that you have to watch, and we run into this a lot with low-end arrows coming from discount stores and whatnot. When you spin this arrow, you'll notice that it spins perfectly true. There's no wobble to that arrow whatsoever. It's not going to do this in flight. Everything is critical, very critical that you shoot really good arrows, really good broadheads, everything is balanced, and the right spine, the right length for your bow at your draw length and your poundage. You want a really good, super sharp broadhead. It's just going to make a better shot, better kill, better penetration. These three-blade broadheads work extremely well on crossbows, by the way.
Today's show is brought to you in part by Rapid River Knife Works.
Rapid River Knife Works is the largest custom knife factory showroom in Michigan. Hunting knives, pocket knives, and kitchen knives. Watch your custom knife being made and engraved. Free laser engraving with your personal message or company logo. Lifetime warranty on every knife and free sharpening. Bring the family and visit Rapid River Knife Works today.
They come from all over the UP and gather on Peninsula Point at the end of the Stonington Peninsula, waiting for just the right wind to help carry them over the lake on the first leg of their journey to Mexico.
Well, the Monarchs are here because this is a migration route, an ancient migration route where Stonington is a dropping off point.
Peninsula Point on the end of the Stonington Peninsula has been a place that monarchs have come for many years. They like to come down to the end of the peninsula. They funnel down. They do not like to fly over water. And so they will come down to the end of the peninsula, usually with a northwest wind. And they love the cedar trees down here, and they will roost on these trees. And when the wind turns north, that's a signal that they're going to leave. They will go across the water with a north or a northeast wind. So when we're looking for migration down here, we never really know exactly when it's going to happen, but we can watch the wind patterns to see, and especially at the end of August and into September, that's when they will start congregating and gathering down at the lighthouse. I think that this peninsula here it's kind of centrally located, and I think because of the position and the formation of the peninsula, the butterflies are kind of channeled down here. with the wind. They stay along the coastline and fly down here and then all congregate down here. So I would think many of them from the UP would be here.
And so they come here to fly to Door County on their trip way down to Mexico, and they use this as a stopping point to rest. You get a lot of them here when you get a south wind because they can't fly against the wind. They always fly with the wind to their back. So the ones that are here to migrate don't actually make it back up. They go down to Mexico, they spend the winter there, and then when spring comes, they drop out of the trees and work their way back up. But by that time, they're fairly old butterflies, so it's their offspring that come back up. So up in this part of the world, it's probably their second to third generation that make it back up here, up to the Upper Peninsula.
The monarchs that do not migrate live for 2 to 6 weeks. And during that time, a female can lay hundreds of eggs. So they will lay an egg on a milkweed plant, usually on the bottom of the leaf. And then in maybe 1 or 2 days, that egg will hatch. That is stage 1 of the larva. And the caterpillar will eat the eggshell. That's its first food. And then it just starts nibbling around the leaf. And then it goes to a stage 2, which has stripes. And it will shed its skin at various times during its lifetime. And then it goes to a stage 3, the antenna starts showing. And then a stage 4. And then the stage 5 is the last one. And by that time, it's getting to be, the antennae are long and curved. And it's a big fat caterpillar. And then it will start looking for a place to make the chrysalis. Once it finds a place, it makes a little silk button at the end of it, and it attaches itself to a twig or to the bottom of a leaf or something, and it will go into a J. And from the J then, the skin will break at the bottom and it will form the chrysalis. And that is green, but it has little gold dots. It's in the chrysalis for 9 to 14 days. And then it breaks open in the bottom and the butterfly comes out and it pumps a fluid into its wings because its wings are all folded up. It pumps a fluid into its wings and then the wings get to be full size. And after it dries, 3 or 4 hours, it'll be ready to take off. That takes about 1 month from the laying of the egg to the butterfly coming out of the chrysalis. The larvae only eat milkweed plants. That is their only food. And there is something in the milkweed plant that will, if a bird, for instance, would eat a monarch, it would make them sick. And so they are protected that way from predators. We try to tag as many as we can. We have small little round stickers that have a number on them. And this sticker is put right on the discal cell of the hind wing of each monarch.
So as we tag them, we also record if it's a male or female. And the way to tell them is on their bottom wings, if on the inside of it, there's a black spot on either side. If there's a black spot on the side, that's a male butterfly. And if there's no spot, then it's a female butterfly.
That one's a female that is lacking a scent gland. That's a male. We got the scent glands, those little dots.
And we write down the number. And those numbers on the sheets are sent to the University of Kansas where the tagging center is. And they are kept on file. As the monarchs migrate, of course, they're heading down toward Mexico for their wintering season. During the winter, any monarchs that are found down there, they will look at the number, and that number will be sent back in, and then at the center they will know what region the monarch came from. And we actually have 20 to 25 monarchs that have been tagged here on the Stonington Peninsula that have been found in Mexico. We have certificates that are sent to us when this happens, so that is very exciting to know that they're making it to Mexico. It's just a phenomenon that these butterflies can do that and get down that far. We have a lot of people that are working for the monarchs, even though their wintering grounds in Mexico are getting smaller and their numbers are getting less. We have many people down there that are trying to protect the monarchs too, as we do up here in our country, and helping these winged voyagers to make their journey back.